In this deadly Taliban stronghold, under the harshest conditions imaginable, he is the perfect man for the job. Lieutenant Colonel Assad Khan commands the 1st Battalion of the 6th Marines, and he leads them from the front. At a time when doubt and tension tend to dominate war news, Khan's remarkable story is the old classic. Pure warrior, courageous and compassionate, leading committed Marines to victory on the battlefield. Overshadowed by troubling events elsewhere in the world, over the last 2 weeks, Colonel Khan and his Marines have achieved greater success than any American military unit under arms since the 9/11 attacks. And his victories are neither illusion nor wishful thinking.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Today, this is part 3 of my interview with Colonel Genghis Khan. Part 1, we talked about his origin. In part 2, we talked about his various commands while in the Marine Corps. And now we pick up where he becomes the battalion commander of 1st Battalion, 6th Marines. Colonel Khan, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing great, thank you. Doing great.
So you become the battalion commander for 1-6. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. So, I left 6th Marines as originally, so the battalion had just gotten back from Okinawa. Now, keep in mind, units are starting to deploy to Iraq for the Iraq war, and Camp Legion is emptying out pretty fast. And so when the battalion came back, they had to give up around 178 NCOs and Marines to other units to flush them out. And in return, they got like 300 non-deployables. So, that's the battalion I inherited, which was gutted in terms of experience, and we had all these non-deployables. And although on paper, the battalion looked like it was staffed, but it really wasn't. And this is the game that Headquarters Marine Corps sort of plays, right? They don't focus on staffing the right people at the right time, because in my mind, the Marine Corps takes great pride in the statement that every Marine is a rifleman. And you can't train a rifleman, as you well know, 29 training days at MCT does not make a rifleman. In my opinion, it takes about a year in an infantry battalion for the young Marine, brand new Marine, to become proficient and trained to standards. So the notion, and it takes about the same time to train a pilot, right? So I think it does the Marine Corps and the Marines and the infantry a great disservice when we start making these false claims that every Marine's a rifleman. Yeah, of course, every Marine is basically trained to shoot a rifle, but he's not a rifleman in terms of the infantry in the fire team, right? So basically we commenced to training. Now I had to do something with these non-deployables that we had, so we created these maintenance platoons and we put them to work.
So for those who don't understand, what is a non-deployable Marine?
Yeah, so non-deployable is for a variety of reasons. The Marine's end of active service, it does not allow him to deploy. So that could be one reason. He's got medical hold. He's been hurt, so he can't deploy because of that. And it could be some personal issues as well, right? So he's not deployable. So those are the Marines we were, backfilled with. And in my mind, to spend training time and ammunition on these Marines doesn't really benefit the battalion because they're not deploying with us, right? So we created these maintenance platoons and we sent them around, all the electricians, plumbers, carpenters, painters, and also welders, and signed a couple of staff NCOs with them. And they went around the base with base facilities and helped out with taking care of all the barracks that had emptied out, because everybody's gone to Iraq. So all these empty buildings at Camp Lejeune, and these Marines would take care of those buildings. So the battalion essentially had, by TO at the time, an infantry battalion rated around 71 sergeants. We had 18. Okay.
Wow.
All new staff officers and chiefs. So the whole staff had to be retrained. All new company commanders and lieutenants. So we were basically a brand new unit that we inherited, to start training, and then all the way up to deploying. In February of 2004, we got 400 new Marines, brand new Marines, out of SOI.
How much time before deployment?
All the way 30 days up, 30 days prior.
So you only had 30 days with these Marines?
Well, not all 400 of them. They're being phased in as the class has
Gotcha.
graduated. You know, so a lot of them were being sent to Iraq. You know, and then we're getting our share to make up for the non-deployables that we had. So you know, we started training. I mean, and my first operational readiness evaluation, we failed. You know, and in fact, there's a great story. We're up in AP Hill, and a major general who was responsible for training education command came to see us from Quantico. And so I had to, you know, we're doing squad envelopments, live fire. And the general asked to go with the maneuver element, because normally I'd go with the maneuver element, see how they're doing. That's a fine, you know, I mean, he's the general. So he goes off with the maneuver element, and our base of fire, you know, upon signal, either ceases fire or shifts fire, right?
Correct.
So in this case, they're going to cease fire. And so while the enveloping squad is moving through the objective area, we have a machine gun go off. The round goes off from the base of fire. And unbelievable. I mean, we're lucky as hell we didn't get somebody killed, right? And the general came back and said, you know, basically told me, hey, you guys are screwed up. I said, sir, I know we're screwed up. That's why we're out here to fix all these things, you know. And I need help, you know. So he basically said, how can you help? I need more ammo because I got to get these people trained up. And I need some AT rounds, like AT4 rounds, which were hard to get. So, and he approved it. And nonetheless, so we expended around over 1,556 rounds, you know, for the M4, M16, over 300,000 link rounds we fired, and everybody got trained to standards. We did 2 rotations at AP Hill, you know, and some complete focus on training. So I think that was really good. We didn't have any SOPs for the infantry battalion, so you know the staff turned to writing SOPs. So they did a lot of work. Now, when the transition happens between an infantry battalion, which generally has 3 line companies, infantry companies, a weapons company, and an H&S company, when you become a BLT, it changes, right? You're not a traditional infantry battalion; you're a battalion landing team. And what that means is that each of the infantry companies assume a completely different mission, right? So you'll have a helo company that trains in helicopter-borne assaults. You'll have a mechanized company or reinforced by tanks, and you'll have a boat company that does amphibious raids.
That's right.
You know? So it's all new skill set, right? You have to teach. And the battalion also, or the BLT also gets an artillery battery. We get a tank platoon, a elite platoon, and a reconnaissance platoon, you know. So it's a whole different skill set, and we had to rewrite all different SOPs for that. So there's a lot of work to be done. And normally a battalion gets 6 months, you know, to form all these units back up, write the SOPs and all that. We got 3 weeks. Right. It was unbelievable. I mean,
Is that because of the war? Why only 3
Yeah, I mean,
weeks?
everything was in a flux, right? So I mean, we were short of units because everybody gone off to Iraq, and the Marine Corps still had to maintain its deployment cycle, right? So you know, to make up for the shortfall, we did an in-house combat leaders course, an NCO course that the staff NCOs taught, and it was closely supervised. And then another example is because all the armored vehicles, up-armored vehicles, Humvees and stuff had been shipped off to Iraq. They were the priority. We had nothing, you know. So the Marines of 1/6, phenomenal, you know, incredible. So we went and got 3/8 inch steel plates, and we made our own arming kits, you know, essentially on the floor and on the side to protect the Marines. And they were tested. We, you know, fired a Claymore mine against that thing and an 81 mortar round, and it withheld. But the problem was we started doing things that weren't, you know, within the rules and regulations, like making modifications of Humvees. So I remember we had some mass sergeant from MEF come down and, you know, knocked on my door. He's like, "Hey, sir, you made an illegal modification of the Humvees." And all in my mind, I'm thinking, I got to take these Marines to Afghanistan, and we have to protect them. All I said is, Master Sergeant, I know that. Get out of my office. Have a good day. You know, basically told him to go okay. So he went complain to the sergeant major that I threw him out of the office, you know. But the point being is he's not going to go with us, right? And I'm doing the right thing. And if the Marine Corps can't provide us up armored vehicles, then we have to do it ourselves. I mean, it's really that simple, right?
Right.
Nonetheless, so we basically did everything ourselves, and the Marines are fantastic on that. And then we formed as a BLT, and we chopped to the MEU, right? 2-2 MEU. And the way the MEU fights is really, if you really think about it, it's supposed to be a brigade level headquarters, but they really have a BLT as its fighting arm, right? I'm talking ground combat. And within that, the MEU basically employs companies, the mechanized company, the amphibious raid company, or the helicopter ground company, which probably gets used the most because the MEU's got incredible, with its aviation squad, it's got incredible capability with helicopters. So we compressed the PTP cycle, the training cycle, and luckily we didn't get anybody killed. We shot AP Hill. Every range was afforded to us, and the beauty of that whole thing was Camp Lejeune was empty, so we could basically get any range we wanted when we wanted to go out there and shoot. So it was fantastic. And then we had to adapt. There's a thing called R2P2, rapid response planning, and basically what that means is within 6 hours you have to be able to execute a mission, right? And that's not a lot of time. So from notification, 6 hours later, you got to have, Marines ready to execute, launching an amphibious raid, mechanized raid, or a helicopter borne raid or trap mission, tactical recovery of aircraft or personnel. And, so in my mind, because of my planning background, our staff was really shit on. I mean, they were fantastic, right? But the issue was we were still archaic in how we were doing the planning. They still had those, those plastic sheets, slides. Remember those that you wrote on with crayons and all that nonsense? And the problem with that was once you made that slide, there was no way of getting that down to the well deck where the Marines were rehearsing or prepping, right? So we take up all the time, probably 4 hours in the planning cycle, and the Marines only had 2 hours to get ready. So it didn't make any sense to us, right? So what we did was we went to PowerPoint, right? So all the planning was being done on PowerPoint, and the Marines down there were seeing it in real time. So they knew what the, what the 3 courses of action, the 2 courses of action, and what the MEU commander's guidelines and all that was. But trying to have the MEU staff understand that took some doing. But so finally I had to go to the MEU commander. I said, listen, for me to be able to execute these missions, this is the way we got to do it. So I understand we were using these slides, from Archibald Henderson's days and stuff. But we got to adapt with the times. And so that was good. So while we're doing that, and then we went through our all our certifications, SOTG certifications, and all that. And the Marines are fantastic. The Marines are really good because we really had really good officers and staff and CEOs that were dedicated and hardworking. Although some of them lacked the experience, but we made up for that from in-house training. And so then we started deploying in February of 2004. We deployed, and while we're deployed, we were training. We're doing hiking with load on the ships, on the roll decks, up the ramps, and all that stuff all the way around, shooting on the ships and whatnot. And then we also did a lot of language training, teach them Pashto and cultural classes while on board ship. So the Marines were kept busy. They were being taught. So on the way, we stopped in Albania. Again, I think it was like 6 days of just cold rain. We did a lot of live fire training there. And so we went from there, and then we stopped in Malta. But I had some issues with how the Navy, their culture on the ship. So they had, as a commander, I was supposed to eat in the Commodore's mess. Now imagine, how the troops eat on board a ship, right? It's just one big mess stick, and you get your metal tray or plastic tray, you get your food put on there, you go eat, and you get out of the way for the next guy to go.
Correct.
Rotation. But for the senior officers, they had this nice like a restaurant.
Restaurant, yeah. Correct.
I mean, no, it was literally. It was, so you go in there, they've got cloth linen, they got cloth napkins and all that stuff. And I walk in there, I was like, wow, it was pretty impressive, right? And until when they started bringing the food out, it was my Marines in like waiters outfit serving us. And I just looked at that and I'm thinking in my mind, you got to be shitting me. You know,
Yeah.
2 weeks from now, I'm going to be asking these young Marines to charge a hill, and he's serving me as a, you know, I mean, it's just pathetic. I stopped eating in the Commodore's mess. I just hated that whole environment. I also hated the fact that every time I came on board, you know, the bosun's call, they did that whistle. I remember getting off the helicopter and everybody on the flight deck is standing at attention, leaning forward as far as they could because they want to get blown off. So it made no sense to me, right? And so I told the ship, hey, this is, you know, this is a waste of time. I'll see your troops. And they said, well, it's our etiquette, you know, naval etiquette. I said, I get all that shit, but don't do it for me. I don't want it done. I don't want the recognition. Thank you very much. So anyway, so we got to
Let me question, sir. For the Marines who are hearing this, that's a leader's leader. But even early on, did that start to ruffle some feathers? Now that you look back,
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because I was the oddball out because I'm not eating in the Commodore's mess. I'd go down the troop mess and eat there with the troops, or I'd go into the officers' mess and eat there. I'd get in line and grab my tray, go sit down and go eat my food. And you know, I had a big stateroom, stateroom with an office and all this stuff. And I'd leave the TV turned on and tell the Marines because Marines didn't have any place to go. You know, because flight deck time is very valuable, so they couldn't get out there. You know, if you go watch TV, I don't give a shit. I'm not going to watch it. You guys want to use it as a lounge? I don't care. You know. So I think that ruffled a lot of feathers because I was going counter against the grain.
well, you're ruffling feathers with the higher ups, but the Marines probably loved it.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I mean, I wasn't doing it for the admiration of the Marines, certainly.
No, and I understand that, but
it didn't make
but
sense.
But as an enlisted, if I see an officer do that, I'm like, hey, that's a real leader.
Like, you know, yeah. I mean, but I was doing it because it's the right thing to do for me. You know, I mean, I mean, to me, it was just disgusting that a young Marine in a waiter's outfit is coming there and serving me like he's a waiter. He's a freaking infantryman. He's a Marine. I trained him as a killer, and now he's serving me food like in a 5-star restaurant. It made no sense to me. It was just disgusting. I wanted no part of it. So I stopped doing it, Frank. So then we, so anyway, so we get to Qatar and we set up there and the ships are offloaded. Now they're going to fly a lot of our equipment and gear into Afghanistan directly from Qatar and C-17s. And our helicopters and stuff obviously couldn't fly from Qatar into, through Pakistan into Afghanistan. We just didn't have the legs to do it. So the ships were going to go offshore Pakistan, and then they were going to fly into Afghanistan. Now, the problem was Pakistan, we had to coordinate with Pakistan. Now, go back to my previous life when I worked in the embassy, and I was coordinating all this stuff. So I knew all the personalities and stuff. Nice. The new commander and some of his staff, and myself, and we went to Pakistan to talk to our counterparts there and get their permission to be able to use their airspace and base some of our assets in Pakistan, such as the C-130s and the P-3s. Initially, they said no, but after I talked to them, it was actually a private meeting, and I really emotionally told them that, hey, we're going in there, and I need this. I need the support of the C-130s and the P-3s, and then their general, a major general. But anyway, so then we got that. So then, all the equipment starts flying into Kandahar, that's in southern Afghanistan, and we start reassembling everybody there. So while we're in Kandahar, again, we focused on shooting. We really latched on to the Army units there and started doing left seat, right seat thing with their NCOs, and so we can pick up some TTPs, tactics, techniques, and procedures. And that worked out pretty well, I think.
Hey, sir, for those who are not aware, can you explain left seat, right seat, and a little bit more specific of that training?
Yeah, so the Army units had operated there, and they, in Afghanistan, prior to the Marines showing up, right? And so they had a lot of experience that our NCOs and our squad leaders and our fire team leaders could use. So, and a couple of times when they went out on a mission, we sent our NCOs out with them to learn. So the MEU was really, playing this this thing is really big because previously the MEU had only gone 400 miles from ships into Afghanistan, right? But we're going like 1,000 miles. So this is a big deal because we're going even further, right? So this is a big deal. And that we're the furthest MEU to operate inland. And in my mind, who gives a shit, right? I mean, these things are meaningless, but to the MEU, it meant quite a bit. And that's fine because it's tough to do. I get it. So they wanted to do, so they came out with a concept of operations that, starting on 25 April, 22 MEU is going to conduct combat operations to defeat anti-coalition militias and secure population areas, right? And this is big broad to support civil military operations in the, and create a secure and stable environment to facilitate unanimous elections. Now think about that. So I'm sitting there thinking, shit, we're here to support elections. I'm here to, get it on. I want to fight with somebody, right? I've been training these Marines. So, and the thing that kind of struck me was, knowing the Afghan culture, knowing how people were, elections are just bullshit there, right? They're just nonsense. This is a Western gobbledygook that we're going to hold elections and everybody's going to vote. It's mirror imaging, right? We're mirror imaging. So we think that, hey, we're going to hold these elections and every person is going to go vote, individual vote. And the reality is the way they vote in Afghanistan is through ethnic backgrounds, through tribal backgrounds, through villages, and through the elders, right? So it's an entire block. If the elder says, I want you to go vote for X, the entire village is going to go vote for X, right? So this was kind of a smoke and mirrors game, right? There's so many ethnic differences in Afghanistan that you can't really, it's tough to bring them all together. I mean, it really is, because not only it's the features are different between a Hazaran and a Pashtun, or a Panjshiri, but their allegiances, alliances, their history is different. I mean, the hatred is just unbelievable. And that's what we never really kind of understood. And I'll give you an example. The interpreters that were being hired. I hired interpreters from Kandahar because we're going to operate in that area, right? And they were Pashtuns. Some of the interpreters that were brought in, by the MEU because they needed clearances and stuff. And these guys were, American citizens or green card holders, whatever. They're from up north. They weren't local from Kandahar. They weren't trusted. They were hated, quite frankly, and they couldn't speak the right dialect of Pashto, and it was comical. I mean, I knew it, so I'd sit there and listen. I'm like, this guy is making no sense. He's embellishing a lot of the, the words and stuff. So anyway, so that was the MEU's concept of operation. They're going to do a 4-phase operation. Phase 1 was staging in, Kandahar Air Base and reconsolidating the MEU. Phase 2 was going and establishing a FOB at Tarin-Kowt in Oruzgan province. So if you look at right above Kandahar, about 80, 90 miles away, there's Oruzgan province, in the central mountains, the central region of Afghanistan, and we were going to establish a FOB there. So that was phase 2 of that. Now you got to keep in mind, FOBs, have become basically a black hole. They'll just consume everything that a unit has. So, and then phase 3 would be improving the overall security of the area for the elections. And phase 4 would be, going into the Taliban strongholds. I don't know what a Taliban stronghold is, first of all, because these guys appear and disappear, right? And so this was, and then retrograde back to amphibious shipping. So that was 4-phase operation. So, we go off, we do an advance to Tarin-Kowt, and we, there's a 6,000-foot runway on the FOB. I mean, think about this. And the FOB takes a life of its own. Its perimeter fence was like 5 miles, okay?
Wow.
So the MEU is focused on building this FOB because they want their own battle space, right? They want to be the farthest operating MEU and they want their own battle space. They want to consider themselves as a brigade, but they only have 1 infantry battalion underneath them with 3 companies. That's reality, right? So in the meantime, they get like an army unit, attached to them. And basically, I gave up about 400 some odd people for the FOB. So I gave up my artillery battery. I gave 81st platoon. I gave my tanks, AVs, and my trap platoon. So the 400 people out of my BLT are gone, right? So, and this thing could suck up even more, but, if allowed to. And so that became a bone of contention for me was because I didn't come to Afghanistan to be a FOB. That wasn't going to happen, right? Tarin-Kowt, the FOB, and it was eventually called FOB Ripley after Colonel Ripley in the Marine Corps, was pretty austere. I mean, there wasn't much going on, but you look at some of these other FOBs. I mean, you look at Kandahar, they had 5 different chow halls. I was eating better at Kandahar Air Base than I did back in Camp Lejeune. They had PXs, they had massage, at Bagram, they had massage parlor, Pizza Hut,
Damn.
Dunkin' Donuts, you name it. They had everything, right?
Sign me up.
Yeah, I'm serious. It was incredible. So, and the problem is these things start taking a life of their own. So you really got to be, and to the new commander's credit, he kept it, very austere, but nonetheless, it took about 400 or so Marines from me, right? And so they set up FOB Ripley, as I said, and in my mind, it was a waste of resources. If you really want to go out and fight, that's what I was looking for. So the MEU's AO was approximately about 15,000 square miles. I mean, so their AO was just massive, and there's no point having a massive AO if you can't control it, right? It's worthless. It looks nice on a map. It's a great briefing tool, but if you can't control it, what's the point, right? So I never understood it. Yeah, and like they'd give me an AO for like 2,000 square kilometers, So I mean, it was just mind blowing stuff, right? And the problem was. They wanted to send out companies from the FOB, each one of the companies, to do raids and stuff. And you can't fight like that, because when you come out of a FOB, the enemy's sitting there watching you. They got kids watching you. They got other people watching you. And you have 3 options, right? When you come out of the gates of a FOB, you can either go straight, left, or right. And they've got signals. They're saying, hey, these guys are going left, right, so whatever it was. My plan was really to stay out there all the time. And they have no idea where I'm going next, right? So I would establish, just stay, once we started doing operations, I just stayed out there for weeks on end, And now the issue is we've got this massive battle space. Nobody has a freaking clue of what the Taliban looks like. And I remember on some of the advances we did, just because a guy had a black shalvar kameez, what we call man dress, I said, oh, that guy's a Taliban. Well, it's absurd. It's absolutely absurd, the thinking that we're applying to, right? Or they said, bear went over the mountain. If you read that, you'll be surprised. Shit. I mean, you can read all the books you want, but you got to get out there, mix it up with people, develop the situation, right? And that's what I want to do. So there was a governor of Orzgan province, and his name was John Muhammad Khan. Now, John Muhammad Khan was a sly fox. I'll tell you what, he was a very interesting person, and probably taught me a little bit about battlefield courage. He was slightly older than me at the time, and would go out, he had his own militia, several hundred people, right? And the way you get power in Afghanistan and those types of cultures, how many weapons you need. So he had a stash of AKs. He even he told me he had a tank buried somewhere from the Soviet war. So they keep these guns, and because you can always replace a fighter. So if somebody got killed, the first thing they do is they grab the weapon, right? Because the weapon means everything. You can give it to another fighter, that type of thing. And so we worked it out with him that he would go out with us, right? And I was paying his people $5 a day to go out and fight with us, $10 a day if we got in a firefight that day, and $20 if they found an IED. So he would have these young stud bucks, on a motorcycle,
looking,
trying to find a freaking ID. It was crazy stuff. And we gave him air panels to identify them from the air. And we gave them a simple thing. How do you identify one guy from another? So every day or two, I would change up, armbands. I'd give them white engineer tape they put on their arms, so we knew who they were, right? Stuff like that, different identification badges. But they were very tough to lead. Now, you got to remember, from a leadership perspective, there's a Marine Corps leadership style, right? You got staff NCOs and officers that you lead through. But when you've got a couple of hundred AMF fighters who are uneducated, who are thugs, basically, right? It's tough to lead them. They lead through intimidation. So I had to up my game because they had to know who was boss. So I remember one instance after a big firefight, they took all the POWs we captured, and a Marine comes running up. He goes, "Sir, they got him kneeling in a ditch. They're about to kill him." And I'm like, "You got to be shitting me. Where?" He tells me, so I go running down there, and sure as heck, they got, about 8 to 10 POWs kneeling in a ditch. So I go up to John Khan. I was like, what are you doing? He goes to me, "Colonel, this doesn't concern you. Go away." I said, "No, I'm not going to go away. You work for me, and we're not going to kill anybody like this. And I'll tell you what, if you do that, I'm going to shoot you and then your people are going to shoot me, and then my Marines are going to shoot them. So we're going to have a big freaking mess here. So why don't you let me just have it? So because every time we give them to you, they come back. I said, I promise you, these prisoners won't come back. I'll send them up to Bago. And that's what we ended up doing. Helicopters came in, took them away, But you had to be on the ball, and you had to have courage, and you had to be able to intimidate them, right? So there's this clash of leadership styles. And I'll tell you what, there ain't too many people can get away with that shit, okay? I was just, at right place, right time. Plus I spoke the languages and all that shit. So, they understood it, right? And a lot of Marines didn't figure that out, that this guy's playing a dual role, in leading the AMF, the militias. And then we got an ANA platoon also.
Why do you say that? Why
National
do you say most Marines didn't figure that out?
Well, because I kept them at a distance from all this stuff, right? Because the AMF had a purpose. So the way we operated was the AMF would lead. We don't know where the hell we're going. Nobody's got a clue. All this stuff they would come with the intel analysis, the enemy's here and enemy's there. We had no idea. Jamal Makan knew, his people knew they were getting local intel, right? So I would always put them in the lead, right? So the AMF guys would be in the lead. I have a liaison, a chief warrant officer with them. And right behind them, I'd put my cat platoon, right? With this shit-hot lieutenant that we had. And behind that would be my jump CP, which I was driving my own vehicle, so I was the driver. My adjutant was sitting next to me. He would report to higher. My air officer is behind me because I influenced the battle with aviation, right? And he was fantastic, my air officer. And then on the right seat in the back was my radio operator, my comms guy, right? Fantastic young Marine. And then the original driver, we trained him to become a machine gunner. So he'd be on the turret with the machine gun, right?
Nice.
And that was it. I mean, we were alone and unafraid on many incident, cases. We'd be out there, and it worked. It worked really well. So anyway, so the ANA platoon that we had, for example, one day had a mutiny. They hadn't been paid in 3 months, right? And these guys, the ANA platoon, here's another kicker, right? The people we just weren't thinking. They were from the north primarily, and they were hated more than anything else. And it really added to the Taliban's propaganda. See, they're bringing people from the north to go through your houses, to touch your women, all that crap, right? And the ANA guys are scared shitless of these Pashtuns down south. And one day they all just said, you know what, we're done. We're not going to fight. Well, why aren't you fighting? Well, because we haven't got paid, so we're not doing it, So, called back, and, finally they got them figured out how to get them paid, but I'm giving them cigarettes. I'm buying bread for them just to keep them happy and keep it going, right? So that was interesting. But when you got this composite force of Afghan militias and ANA and, this all bunch of other strap hangers along with my Marines, it was tough to maintain control. And to compound all that, the MEU was using names of operations like from Bruce Springsteen's songs, El Dorado, Rio Grande, Asbury Park, Cadillac Ranch. This is all sexy shit. And the MEU CP drive me nuts because trying to explain that to an Afghan, shit, I couldn't pronounce some of these things, right? Ulysses, type operation. And trying to explain that to the Afghan was just stupid, So I was like, this is crazy. I'm not doing it. But, on the good note, we had like female searchers. So we took, because we needed that for the culture, right? So I think this is all the way back in 2004. We took about a dozen female Marines and even sailors, volunteers with us in actual gunfights. I mean, they weren't FOBs. They went with us.
So these are probably some of the first females in the combat zone.
In combat, yeah.
In combat.
I mean, they're female. Yeah, they're females on FOBs. Yeah, hundreds of them, thousands of them, right? But to actually go out, guns loaded and get in firefights, yeah, absolutely. And every one of them did fantastic. The captain that was in charge of them, she was an animal. I mean, in one gunfight, we assaulted up the ridgeline, and she comes up, the sailor's mouth, and basically told me my Marines are a bunch of pussies because she's humping a radio up this mountain, shooting her way up. And, it is what it is, And then we also had like civil affairs people, like we dug 21 wells. And because one day I was sitting outside this village and I'm trying to think, we just can't kill our way out of it. We got to help these people. And we're at this high desert type environment. and everybody was complaining about water. So, so one day I'm thinking, okay, I got to figure something out. So I told the Marines, I said, go get me the storekeeper from the village. And the store's a mud hut. And he's got cheap candy and some sugar and flour and some beans and cigarettes. That's all the guy sells, right? And the store is probably 10 foot by 8 foot, right? Small mud hut. So they bring the storekeeper out. And whenever I talked to the Afghans, I would sit in a chair. I would always sit in the chair. And the reason being is because they want authority, right? And they want to respect you. So if you see an American officer sitting on the ground, he doesn't know what the hell he's doing. I'm telling you right away. But they don't respect that shit.
Why is that? Because now they're coming down.
Yeah. I mean, so you got to let them know you're the boss. So I would always sit in the chair. So I had like a field chair, that we put out, and I'd sit there and I'd talk. So anyway, so the shopkeeper comes and grabs my legs. He goes, "Sir, I'm not tolerable." I said, "I know that. Grab a seat." I gave him some chai, and I was like, "So what do you do?" He said, I'm a shopkeeper, sir." I said, "You're like a businessman, right?" "Yes, sir." "What did your father do?" "Sir, he was a shopkeeper too." "Your father was a businessman too, right?" "Yes, sir." I said, "Well, I got a business proposition for you. I want you to dig a well in your village." I'm like, "Sir, I don't know how to dig a well." I'm like, "But you told me you're a businessman. So go down to Kandahar, find out who the well digger is, bring his ass up here, and start digging the well. And whatever it costs you, I'll pay you double. And you got 2 weeks. You got 2 weeks to do it. And I'll be back in 2 weeks. And if there ain't a well water in that hole, I'm going to bury you in that. You understand?" And he's like, "Oh, yes, sir." And he runs off. And 2 weeks later, I show up, and sure as shit, he's got a well done. I'm shocked. Like, this actually worked, right? And the Marines are like, "What the hell?" And so this is going. So he's pulling out his receipts and he's trying to tally it up. It came to like $1,960 some dollars. So I told my finance guy, I said, "Write it up to $2,000, give him $4,000."
How much money are you walking around with?
It depends. I mean, sometimes $300,000, $400,000. Depends on the operation, right? So if I've got 200 people, I got to pay every day, but I don't pay them every day because then they disappear. I'll pay them at the end of the operation, right? I used to have them sit in a circle and go physically pay each one by myself and shake his hand and thank him. Where John Mahmoud Khan, the governor, wanted me to give him the money so he could keep half of it, and then, screw these. But I wasn't doing that shit. So anyway, so the well digger, the shopkeeper, I gave him a phone. I said, "Every 2 weeks, you're going to call us. You can go anywhere you want. You better call me every 2 weeks, and my Marines are going to come and check. And if there's a well, we're going to give you $4,000. This guy and his team dug like 21 wells. So it's $84,000, right? Now, do you know what the cost is of a well that USAID was digging?
No, how much?
$65,000 for one well. We were doing it for 4,000.
Oh shit!
So that's how much waste, fraud, and abuse it was. And I don't know where the waste was because they're probably bringing somebody from the U.S. You got to pay for it. They got to pay for security. All that other bullshit.
So you knew this because of your intimate knowledge of the culture.
Yeah, I mean, I knew the culture, I knew the people, and I knew how to get work out of them. I'm not going to sit there and kiss his butt. Here's the deal, buddy. You better dig me a well. I'm going to come back and I'm going to bury you in that hole. I've done it for less. If I
amazing
get a markup of 1.5, I gave him double the money. And the other thing we did was innovative while we're getting ready was sappy plate holders, right? So we had the old flak jackets where you basically buckle yourself up, and the Marines would heat up in the mountains. They're heavy and all that shit. So you've seen a lot of these sappy plate holders. It's just just slide the plate in there and strap.
Yes.
You can breathe. And I told the Marines, I said, "You have a choice. I'm not going to force you to do it because it's your whatever personal risk you want to take. But I can't do it. It'd be wrong on my part. But these are available if you want to use it. And across the board, that everybody uses it because it just made sense, right? There's a lighter. Your body could breathe, and it's
was that the first time they were introduced in the Marine Corps?
Yeah, so we started. So and we got them made in Kandahar. We found a guy that made us a sample, and then he had to go to Pakistan, get the right material, and come back, and he made us like 1,000, for $10 a pop or something. So it worked out pretty well. And all this was. You got to keep in mind, I had a great staff. So by the time we got to Afghanistan, I mean, the BLT staff was shit hot. We had, obviously Sergeant Major Hall was there. He's a former tanker. Had XO was Major DeWall, infantry officer, hardworking, just a stud. OPSO was Major Christmas, General Christmas's son, really smart, bright young man. And I liked him because he'd stand up to me. You know, I mean, we would have really hot debates and interaction. My intel officer was on the money every time. This guy was so shit hot, it was incredible. Bullard, Captain Bullard, you know, incredible. And he could do analysis and tell you exactly if we get ambushed in a certain area, they're going to break contact and they're going to end up here. So we would have aviation waiting for them. There's a great clip, if you can find it, where there's 3 squadrons running and there's a helicopter turret video, black and white, that just takes them out. That was Bullard, you know, anticipating these guys are going to be there. And so he's really, really good, right? And then we had like Chief Warrant Officer Cheney, who was an NBC officer that I put in the lead with the AMF platoon. Think about that. You know, I didn't need an NBC officer, right? So we put him in the lead with the AMF, with the Afghan militia guys. In the lead. He was unbelievable, incredible. I mean, he was a true hero, you know. Company commanders and the first sergeants were awesome. And the lieutenants are good. I had a lieutenant, the cav platoon commander, Lieutenant Nitioka, you know, was awarded the Silver Star because he did a bang-up job, but he was taught wrong initially. I remember initially he was taught to, you know, stay in the back and talk to his CAT vehicles on the radio, add confusion and all that shit. So one day I just I got all the staff incident officers. I said, you got to get in front of your formation. That's it. I'm done with this shit. And a couple of them had concerns about, well, sir, if we're in the front, you know, we're exposing it. Well, you know, you get paid the big bucks. That's what we push. At first ambush, because all of a sudden I see the ambush starting off. They're shooting at us, and the Marines are turning around back looking for instructions from the squad leaders, platoon commanders, and all that stuff. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. I was like, Jesus, man, we're screwed up. The Marines should focus on the enemy. They should be looking forward. They should never turn around. And this whole shit that we got taught, MCT and SOI, about hand and arm signals and, you know, that shit doesn't work. Unit leaders got to be in the front, and they got to lead from the front. And when I told my staff and senior officer that, I said, I'll be in front of you as a battalion commander. I will expose myself to greater risk. And I did. I mean, that was my job. You know, a lot of people thought it was crazy, I think, a lot of times, because, you know, legends are born out of this stuff, and, you know, and they get embellished. And a lot of times it wasn't crazy. I remember one time I charged into an ambush because they shot up the vehicle, and as I'm charging into the ambush, I don't have any magazines. I didn't grab my vest, so I got nothing. So Cottrell and I are trading magazines, shooting our way up this mountain, and we get to the top. I was like, Cottrell, you know, throw me a grenade. You know, he's like, for what, sir? I said, I'll throw on the military crest side. On the other side, he's like, what if the MF rolls back on us, sir? I said, yeah, you're right. You know, cover me. So get up there, and we're sitting there sharing a canteen of water, and he goes, sir, you're crazy. I'm like, what? You know, I'm like dead tired. And he's like, you don't even have your SAPI plate hold. You know, I've looked at it, but the word got around that this guy is so brave, he doesn't even wear his beard and shit, doesn't have his helmet.
Yeah.
It had nothing to do with that.
Yeah.
I just reacted, right?
Correct.
And then later on, there's another firefight happening further down. So I was like, shit, I got to go down there. I'm dead tired now, right? And as we get on the road, the enemy opens up with RPGs, boom, 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 you know, and Cottrell starts running. And I said, Cottrell, we're not going to run, you know? And again, the legend was that this guy is so intense, so brave, that they're shooting RPGs at him, and he wasn't running. He wasn't scared. The reality is, I was just bone tired, and my mind was, you know, shit, you want to kill me?
Yeah.
Go for it. So anyway, my air officer was Captain later Major Dakar. You know, good guy. I mean, just a stud warrior. And then I had the facts from McBride and Hunt. I mean, really, really super individuals. You know, so I always had with Nitioka's CAT team or CAT section reinforced, I would always have an air controller with them, right? A fact that we could really start bringing in the air. And what part of the problem was, you know, the Marine Corps' ATO cycle didn't really work in Afghanistan because you'd have to request air 24 hours in advance. I don't know where we're going to come in contact. I have no freaking clue. So we got all this air requested. They're coming on station. We're not employing them. Then I'm getting my butt chewed. We have requested all this air. Use it. I can't use it. I'm not going to just drop bombs aimlessly, you know. And in Afghanistan, what they had a squadron common, right? So with troops in contact, you just flip to the street if there are troops in contact, and every airplane around would come to your system.
Nice.
So I mean, so we use both, right? So we use both. And so what we did was every time we moved, based on Captain Bullard's assessment, we figured out we think we're going to get ambushed here, so we need air on station. I'd talk to my air officer. He'd have it lined up. We'd pass the word. These are aircraft that's going to be available for this long. And you got to remember, at that altitude, a lot of these airframes only stood around for, you know, flew around for like 30, 45 minutes because they'd run out of fuel and then they'd have to go back also, right? And the Marine Corps always flew as sections, right? So if a section of Cobras, they run out of Harriers, run out of fuel, they both go back, right? Where the Army would fly split section. So if you got two Apaches, one run out of fuel, one would stay there. This guy go refuel. He'd come back, cover for him, and then the other guy would go. So it was a pretty good system, I thought. So and our commander's intent was really simple. I saw these guys writing these glorified commander's intent for the Marine Corps Gazette, to ever forever live in infamy. Mine was just 3 words, man. 3 words. But my Lance Corporal, they had to remember it, and it was really simple: find, fix, and finish. And what I meant by find was we're going to use reconnaissance and intel to find the enemy and the AMF right up front, because the locals. We're going to find the enemy, then we're going to fix them through direct fire, the CAT platoon, the CAT reinforced section up front, because I had another one in the back, and then we're going to finish them through maneuver, a rifle company coming around, or through aviation. A really simple concept. The Marines could visualize it; they understood it, right? So as soon as they saw CAT opening up, they knew we were in the fix phase, right? 50 cals going off.
Yep.
And as soon as they saw the airplanes coming in, they knew, okay, Khan is going to use the airplanes to finish the enemy. Or they saw my Charlie company coming around. Okay, so it's very simple stuff, and it worked. Initially, when we got there, so the MEU is going up to the FOB to establish their FOB and their kingdom and all that stuff. And we occupied a couple of choke points, and we just basically sat there. So there's a choke point on one route that I left some Marines there, and there's another one that we established, and then we finally ended up having our own little FOB there, basically rearm, refuel type place, right? Some vehicles could come, instead of going all the way to Terracotta, the big FOB, they would come this little one, get their fuel, get their MREs or whatever they needed, and go back and on patrol. And the issue with that was I didn't have enough forces. So at sometimes I'd have a fuel truck sitting there with like 6 or 8 Marines, and that thing could be attacked. So what we came up with the plan was we had these fighting holes, and I told them put cami netting all across these fighting holes. The holes were empty. There's nobody in them. But the enemy couldn't see that. They thought, they're occupied. So it was that type of stuff, and I'd have somebody go back at night and spend time with them. So you just have to outsmart the enemy, right? So while we sat there for a couple of weeks, and Major General comes one day, and he goes, "I thought you Marines are going to kick some ass and stuff, and do something. You guys really haven't done anything." So I'm briefing him. I said, "Turn me loose. I'll show you what we can do." He goes, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, this is what I'm doing. We've got Terracotta, and the FOB up there, and we're just sitting here guarding checkpoints. It's horseshit." He basically turned me loose, And then we started operating as a task force Genghis, right?
Nice.
And basically that was that AMF that I described, the CAT, my jump CP, Charlie Company, another CAT behind, and then the log train, right? That's how we did it. And basically, John Mahmoud Khan and I became like peas in a pod, right? And the first set of operations was 8 days we cleared to the south, all these villages. And didn't really got a feel for the environment, worked with some of the locals and all that stuff. And then we came back and we did the big 17-day operation. You have a slide of that went all the way to Deshopan, which was about 150 miles of rough terrain. I mean, bad terrain. Destroyed nearly all our vehicles. Just mechanical issues. And we went all as high as 9,500, 10,000 feet, right? And no Marine unit had fought at that altitude. But anyway, we dismounted our 50 cals. I got donkeys, and we put some weapons on the donkeys and we took them up the mountain, right? And we had a big firefight there and a bombing run. And I think they claimed we killed like 30-some people and all that stuff. But nonetheless, so the 17-day operation that we had was, a series of ambushes along those maps, and you can put that up, heading towards Deshopan. And the major fight was a place called Andar, Andar, and Sandabus, right? It was a major fight. And we fought for hours and got ambushed and, just going at it. And it was good. I mean, we were very, very successful. I mean, we just kicked the shit out of it. And, my hats to the enemy also. I had a lot of respect for them, And the reason being is you got this massive force of Marines coming, and they still wanted to fight us. You got to respect that, And we use a lot of aviation assets, especially in our Sondables. I mean, my air officers were absolutely fantastic. The biggest concern in these firefights is really fratricide, and my biggest, thing I take pride in. We never had Marines kill each other or wound each other. Right? So that's number one. Number two is when you're bringing aviation in such a closed area, you got to have planes coming in, ingressing, egressing. Next one's coming in, and you got to deconflict. And the air officers and the FACs were fantastic. I mean, they really were. And we used all kinds of airplanes, all the way from a B-1 bomber to AC-130. We had our own AC-130 called the Reaper, with the 105 cannon and all that shit shooting out the side. A-10s we'd use like gummy bears every day. I mean, and I love the 30 millimeter freaking saw bug, that type of thing. It was fantastic. And Apaches, Army Apaches were awesome. Marine Cobras, F-16s, Harrier jump jets. So we used everything in the gamut, right? It was great. We even talked to a U-2 one day when I was up at 9,500 feet. He was relaying for us, a U-2 flying up there.
Wow.
Reconnaissance mission. So it was good. I mean, so that was the first set of operations. I do a disservice trying to talk about each individual one because I'm going to forget something. A couple of times it was tough, man. Now you got to remember these Marines basically stayed out for 3 months. I never changed my uniform for over 3 months. I wore the same freaking set of things, dysentery, all that shit, right? And we did good. So during this time, we also had Geraldo came out, right? And Geraldo came out and, spent the day with the Marines and really enjoyed being with us and, did a satellite link back to Camp Lejeune to the Key Wives and stuff and spent, and really showcased the BLT, which was interesting. And we can talk about that later on. And then, so once we got to Deschopin, while we were going to Deschopin, I made a critical tactical error, right? I split my forces because we had a vehicle, go down. Nobody got hurt. Went in a ditch, and while they're recovering it, I kept going because you want to keep pushing the envelope, right? So I kept staying on the enemy's tail, and pretty soon I got like a 20-kilometer gap, and it's getting dark. And now I'm thinking, holy shit, I screwed up. I messed up. You never split your forces. My fault. Luckily, what happened was the AC-130 showed up on station because he'd come on every night because they don't even fly at night, right? So my air officer talked to him and said, "Hey, here's the deal. We got troops back there. Half the convoy is back there, 20 kilometers. Can you provide overwatch for them?" And he was awesome, So he said, "I'll bring him in. No worries." So he kind of brought him in, and then we had a repeater or a comm site on a mountaintop. We were bivouacking, so he picks up some communications, our SIGINT guys. We pick up communications, and he's like, "Hey, you got anybody on this mountaintop?" We're like, "No." So he's like, "Somebody's talking on top of that mountaintop, So he requests permission to, take him out." They're like, "Do it, prove it." So I think he fired like 105 round at the thing. And the Marines, we're tired, bone tired, full of dust, hungry, haven't slept. Each one of them lost 15, 20 pounds by then. And the Marines just go ballistic when they see this, nighttime with that round being fired and, all this sparkle comes off, fragmentation, it lights up at night, right? So big hurrah, everybody's screaming. So I got on the net. I said, he says target destroyed. I said, negative. Need 5 more rounds. Fired like 5 more, 105, boom, 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 boom. And the things that, and Marines just loved it. Anyway, so next day we get to Deschopin, which was our mission, right? And the idea was we get to Deschopin, and then we go down to Kalat, and we're done. We go back to Kandahar, and mission complete. We're done with all this. So what happens is we get extended for another week.
Wait a second. So you were already out there for, you said 3 months?
Yeah, 3 months. Yeah.
And then you get extended?
Yeah. But I've already told the Marines, hey, we just got to fight our way to Deschopin. After Deschopin, we clear the route. We're done. We're going home, right?
Wow.
John Mahmoud Khan is with me with all his militia. He's got his vehicles and all that shit, right? And he thinks we're going to Kandahar also. I get this call on the radio. We've been extended for a week, and we got to fight now, go all the way back.
Why?
Whatever, higher level politics, whatever the hell it was, you know. Maybe they could sign up 2 more voters. The bottom line is this. Okay, once you tell Marines it's over, right? And so you know, I get this word and I'm thinking, holy shit. So I was so frustrated, I went to the side of this like a bluff area, and I'm standing there, and my officer comes up and he's like, "Sir, are you okay?" And I wasn't okay. I mean, I teared up. You know? I was like, "Let me tell you something, Brian." I said, "One day you're going to be general officer, and don't you ever effing forget this. Don't ever do this to your Marines." You know. Anyway, I got all the Marines together, and I told them, "Hey, here's the bottom line. You know, we got to go back. We got to fight our way all the way back to those canyons, and we're going to do it because we're Marines, right?" And you know, Marines were, I mean, they weren't happy about it, but they did it. And then John Mahmoud Khan's like, "Hey, I'm going to Kandahar. You're on your own." So like, you know, Governor, I said, "You know, I understand that, but I need you. I'm asking you as your brother, as your friend. If you can do this, I would highly appreciate it." And he's like, "Oh, no, you guys don't pay me enough," and all this stuff. You know, he's a typical fox. So anyway, so we take off, lead off, and we make a right-hand turn, and Kandahar is towards the left. And all of a sudden I get a call. John Mahmoud Khan is following us. I thought, oh, shit, hot. So I pull over, walk back, and he comes and gives me a big hug. He goes, "You're my friend. I can't leave you like this. I will go with you. We'll fight together."
That's awesome.
You know, I
That's
mean,
awesome.
yeah, I mean, and he wouldn't have done that for anybody, right?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, John Mahmoud Khan later on got killed, you know, many years later. Good guy. I mean, I really liked him. Got killed by some assassin. So I really liked him because he's an honorable dude, right? I mean, despite his flaws, right? Everybody's got flaws, but he was an honorable, courageous fighter, and he'd be right there with his, you know, AK fighting and charging. I mean, good guy, you know. And we became fairly close. So one day he's telling me, like, he tells me that I've got 32 kids. And I'm like, "You're full of shit. You don't have 30." He goes, "Yeah, I got 32 kids." I said, "Name them." So he gets to like the 14th kid, and he's like, "My head hurts. I can't do it anymore." We had a great relationship, working relationship. You know, it was awesome. But he did. I mean, he did have 32 kids, so he wasn't BSing. So we on the way back. Not much happened, but there's still this group of fighters that were around. We're getting intel that they're still running around. They told us that they'd gone up this mountain. And, you know, we get there and I'm like, dismount, we're doing it. And I could just tell everybody, like, this dude is crazy. You know, I'm not letting go. So we get up to like 9,500 feet, donkeys, you know, dismount our weapons, radios, and we go to the top of the mountain. And that night, what happens is I've got this A&A platoon and this lieutenant with them, Illinois, and they start receiving fire, heavy machine gun fire, and they're being suppressed. And so we call for air support. It just so happened that day there's a big sandstorm in Bagram and Kandahar. No aircraft are flying. So, you know, as I told you earlier, you go to the squadron common and we flip on that and we get an airplane. So the first question he's asking, what kind of airplane you are, what kind of ordnance you got. He's a U-2 flying at 60,000 feet. Wow. So I remember getting pissed off. Like, you know, what good are you to me? And he's like, Genghis 6, calm down. I mean, pilots, I love him. Like, I can relay for you. Tell me what's going on, you know. So my air officer takes over. We give him the JTAC brief and all that stuff. So he comes back. He goes, "Hey, I got a B-1 inbound." I don't know where he was, right? The B-1 probably took off from Diego Garcia or something. And he said he's going supersonic. He'll be at your pause in like 5 minutes. So all this shit is going on. You got a B-1, you know, flying in supersonic. He's programming the JDAM, and all of a sudden the chaos. The Combined Air Operations Center in Qatar. Now, this is how screwed up we are, right? The chaos in Qatar, right? Another country refuses permission for the B-1 to drop the bomb while you got troops in contact. And so the story goes, and I don't know, the legend is that I was so frustrated that I grabbed the handset and I said, "MF, if you don't give permission to drop, I will find you and I will kill you."
I believe it. It's not a myth.
Yeah,
I
don't
believe
know.
it.
So one star heard it. He came on the hook, and I said, this is the satellite thing, right? Everybody's hearing this, and I told him, I said, hey, I'm the senior guy on the ground. I can see the ridge line because this lieutenant wasn't JTAC qualified. They weren't giving him release. My air officer's next to me. I got facts. So anyway, so the general and they work it out. They said, okay, permission granted. So he releases the JDAM, but right before he releases it, he goes, how far is the friendly forces? So I said, it's like 400 meters. He's like, danger close is like 1,000, whatever, 700 to 1,000. And he goes, I can't drop it so fast. And I remember at infantry officers course, some instructor smacking me in the back of the head, and because of the elevation difference, right? I was trying to figure out the elevation on motor. And so I asked the lieutenant, how high up are these guys from you that are shooting down on you? It was like 200 meters or something. In elevation, right? Talk back to the B1. Yeah. So I mean, the math is working out, right? So I remember asking my air guys asked them, hey, what's the frag pattern on this data? Go straight up, even better, right? The frag pattern, so it's going straight up, higher elevation. So we said drop it. I remember telling that lieutenant, on my count, get everybody down. God be with you. We don't know, and everything worked out.
Damn.
And so while the B1 goes across to make his turn, come back, his sensors are picking up this heat signatures, and it's actually the guys we're chasing on the other side of the ridgeline, supposedly. And Intel had told us they're on the other side of the ridgeline, local people. And so give clearance to drop. So he dropped like 5 more JDAMs on their ends. So we killed supposedly 30 some that day, some camos.
Wow.
Big victory. We get on and we go back to make our way back to FOB Ripley in Tarrant Cup, right? Took us 2 days to get back. We're beat up, all this crap, just torn up, right? And then we find out we just got extended for another 2 weeks.
You got to be kidding me.
So I'm like, this shit doesn't end, man.
So
just keep it going.
So you're going on 4 months now.
Yeah, around there, 3.5, 4 months, right? So I'm just thinking in my mind as a commander of infantry unit that this shit isn't ending. These guys are just milking this, for being the farthest deployed MEU, being the longest deployed MEU. So these are all accolades that they're collecting, right? And I don't know who's talking to whom, but I would have said, you know what, and we were done. We were toast, man. All my vehicles were crapped out. Marines had lost so much weight. I mean, it wasn't easy, right? But these guys just keep extending us. So, whatever. So, anyway, so this time, the next big operation was for like 2 weeks. We go north of Tarrant Cup, and that's the second set of maps that you had. And we make our way up there. And we ended up doing like a river crossing, it's called the Charchin area, and an area called Miam-Do was a big village. And to get there, we had to cross the river. So, my ops found a fording site. We used some rafts to get the smaller vehicles across, some little ferries. You might see some pictures. And we found a massive arms cache that took us like 2 days to blow up. I mean, there's shit all over the place, right? And EOD took them 2 days to blow up, and then, minor firefights up there. They burnt some of our trucks. And I remember there's a pass, and Taliban had burnt our logistics trucks, right? Not the military, they're commercial. And so the pass is blocked. So now what do you do? And so I got permission that we use one of our MTVRs, the 5 tons, to, the gunny tells me, yes, sir, the MTVR thing, not, but, it's going to screw up the front end of that vehicle. Go for it. We keep banging them, boom, boom, boom. Got them over the side, open the road. And we came back. So, a couple of minor fights, but nothing of major significance. We found a lot of ammunition, a ton of ammunition and mines and things like that we obviously blew up in place. And then we got back to Tarrant Cup, and basically that was it. And we started shutting down and drove back to Kandahar. And literally, when I got to Kandahar city, one of the Humvee in front of me, the tire came off the vehicle. It was on 3 tires, and the tire came off and hit like a rickshaw. That turned into a major, crowd scene. Big crowd forms. People at Kandahar base, get all paranoid. So they launched the QRF, and we've got helicopters flying. It's just adding to the chaos. When all I did was give the guy $200 and go away. thing is solved, right? I mean, that's simple. We don't need to, we're spending more money in just fuel,
Right.
telecom. And we got to Kandahar, and it was kind of an emotional moment, because I remember there were people lined up, because we're like the lost battalion that's returning, right? And we didn't know what the media. I mean, I knew that Geraldo was there, and we'd get like a couple of these reporters. There's a lady from Australian reporter lady, and another American reporter. But I wasn't engaged with any of this. We got PAO guys, doing all this stuff. So I have no idea what the hell's going on. But nonetheless, the base really took good care of us. We had steak and lobster that night, that type of thing. And I remember getting there, walking. For the first time, I'm walking and I stopped, and I said, "Sergeant Major, you feel that?" And he's like, "Feel what's it?" We're walking on cement on concrete, right? And we hadn't walked on concrete like 3.5, 4 months, right? So it was just a different feeling. So it was pretty neat. And when we got there, then so obviously clean up and all this stuff. And the general our CG came down, he flew down to talk to us and talk to the Marines, gives a kick-ass speech. And that's a quote I believe you played in part one. These Americans are not like the ones before, all that stuff. And we went in their area, and we kicked their ass, right? And I mean, each one of these operations, you can really get down in detail, but I would be doing a disservice trying to talk to them, just a big scale and stuff. So we did all that, and then then we were sent up. We were asked to come to Kabul, or go up to Bagram, where our general's command post was, and then go down to Kabul to meet the ambassador and the JTF commander, combined CJTF commander, I believe it was General Barno at the time. And it was a big deal. Media, everybody's there, and I didn't want to talk to anybody. I was freaking done. So they made a big hoopla about all that shit. And then and that was it. We came cleaned up. All the vehicles were essentially destroyed.
Hey, sir, what was the physical, mental, and emotional impact on you and your Marines after 4 months of almost nonstop movement and combat? I mean, what did that do to you?
Yeah, I mean, emotionally it's draining, right? Yeah, I mean, physically we all lost 20, 25, 30 pounds. I mean, so that was a given, right? We all knew, we all, so that was, so that happened. But I think on the emotional side, we were so secluded that we were kept away from what the hell is going on in the world. We had no idea, that at that time Abu Ghraib was happening, and all that stuff. Pat Tillman was killed. So we didn't get any news. So it was, so emotional side. I think when I came out of there, I can speak to my emotions. It was pretty rough in the sense that. And in the next segment, I'll go into why it was rough, because of the command relationships and the relationship between the MEU staff and us and all that stuff. I mean, they didn't do us any favors, and I didn't put up with their shit. I mean, that's simple. I mean, I'm the BLT commander. I don't want some staff officer telling me what to do. I just tell them go away. It's literally go away. Don't come to my CP, get out. And they didn't like that. And I think that undermined a lot, but we'll talk about that in the next segment. I don't want to go into that right now.
What about your Marines? How were your Marines doing?
The Marines were doing good, because we had really strong NCO leadership, and I shielded them from all this stuff, from all the other stuff that was going on. I always kept them out of it. I tried to shield most of my officers and staff NCOs. Some of them got sucked into it, and we'll talk about that later. And but for the most part, I think the morale was pretty good, but, because we had done something. We had gone there and done something that nobody had ever done before. We had fought in a manner that nobody had ever fought before. We had taken local Afghan militia, Afghan National Army forces, integrated them into us, and used each elements, strengths to our advantage, right? So the Marines had combat power. We had intensity. The Afghan militia knew how to find and flush out the enemy. So we were kind of keying off each other. So in that sense, I think there's a lot of pride amongst the Marines. But everybody was tired. Our vehicles literally were torched. They were just destroyed. Tires falling off, tailgates falling off, suspension busted. And I had a great motor transport crew that was just, kicking ass trying to keep these things going. And within that, I mean, the first time we did a movement, we would go a kilometer and stop because somebody popped a tire rod, so I'm thinking, man, this ain't gonna work. And then we're waiting for the maintenance vehicle to come up and do it. So I told the Marines, I got everybody around. I said, let me tell you something. Every time we stop, I want to see the hoods up. I want you guys out checking your vehicles. This is our ride. And every vehicle commander will do that, right? And if you have a flat tire, the contact vehicle ain't coming up. I'm not stopping for anybody. You better fix it by the time the last vehicle goes by you. If you don't, guess what? You're gonna get left behind. The Taliban's are gonna fix you. So the Marines started rehearsing how to change tires, how to do tire rods, and the basic maintenance. And they got very good at it. And then, from then on, we never had any issue because I wasn't stopping. We just keep moving, right? And so they got pretty good at it. So I think just coming down to Kandahar, we went through some tough times, man. I'll be the first one to tell you, it sucked, but because of the training back at Camp Lejeune and because of the intensity that we instilled in them, they were able to endure. Quite frankly, I don't think most people could do it, because I know there's an Army unit that went back when we left. They went out like 15 kilometers from that FOB and turned around and came back and said, this is just too damn far.
Wow. And how many kilometers did you guys go out?
Well, we went over 150 miles, man. So you can do the math, whatever it is, 200 kilometers. And because we weren't letting up. I mean, that was intensity. If you're going to shoot at me, I will hunt you down. And we were like locusts coming through the valleys, right? Not only the main valley, but also the adjacent valleys. And you got aircraft watching the ridge lines. We had it secured. And that's the way you have to fight in Afghanistan. You can't fight by sending a company out or a platoon out. Special forces can do that, sure. But nobody had taken a reinforced infantry battalion and sent it out to fight and stay out there, rather than being tethered to a FOB and become a FOBit. And then you spend all these resources and time protecting the FOB. That makes no sense. You're there to fight, not sit on your ass and become a FOB. That was my view of things. And so I couldn't be prouder of the Marines in my mind. It was good. I mean, they're still talking about it to this day. I remember when I came out of there, I was getting emails from general officers and stuff and said, "You guys have made history," because nobody had really done it. And it just happened to be because of local relationships, knowing the culture, having trained the Marines. I knew how they would fight. Being upfront with them, because normally battalion commanders would fight back from the COC. So, they would sit in the COC on radios, directing traffic. Well, I wasn't going to do that. I'm with my Marines, and the battalion commander would have a PSD, personal security detail, right? A squad of Marines walking around with guns protecting them. That's a bunch of horse shit.
Who did you have protecting you, sir?
I had nobody. I had a Marine rifle company. I'd go sick. I mean, seriously, what better, right? So I'd be with them. I don't need anybody to protect me. And the other thing that bothered me really, as a at a human level, as a commander, is why do I rate a security detail when that lance corporal doesn't have it? What makes me that much better? And that's I've always approached shit like that, right? So I didn't need that. I didn't need force recon guys or my battalion recon guys walking around me, doing all that shit. I did, and it's just a different way of approaching things, right? It doesn't make me any better or worse. Now, there's some officers who wanted that, and that's fine. It's their comfort level. I didn't need it. Half the time you see me, I don't even have a flak jacket on. I don't, sometimes I did when the threat level was up or we're in the middle of something, I put it on, but most of the time I didn't have it. And that's to show the Afghans, I am not scared of you. When they see us all huddled up, what kind of message are you sending the Afghans? So I think these things are important when you're dealing with different cultures and different people. You got to let them know, hey, I'm just as courageous or even more courageous. I'm crazier than you are. They understand that language, right? But if you're going to be some freaking prep school chubster, they're going to treat you like that. And I know what they used to say about, certain officers and stuff. They had no respect for them.
Mhm.
They used to call them a baby lamb. No names. Yeah,
Right on. Right on.
Yeah.
But in essence, this was the enemy seeing certain individuals, how they behaved, how they carried themselves out, and they knew who were the lambs and the warriors.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's the way the Afghans were. I mean, they don't mess around. They're phenomenal fighters. I mean, think about the Taliban. You can say whatever you want. When you're seeing several hundred Marines coming at you, and you still got the balls to stand up and shoot, knowing you're going to die, that takes a certain amount of courage, man. But for the local Afghans to follow you, they have to fear you. You understand that concept? It's leadership through fear. They feared John Muhammad Khan implicitly. They saw that John Muhammad Khan, although we were best of friends, feared me, right? So that's how I imposed control. You understand? And that's not, Marine Corps leadership is not based on fear, right? It's based on trust. But trying to play that, we can't switch on and off. So I had to juggle this leadership style.
Correct.
And a lot of people misread it, and that's fine. I really don't give a shit. I did what I needed to do. I had no intention of staying in the Marine Corps after the rank of lieutenant colonel. My goal was always to command a battalion in combat. We're extremely successful. I didn't want anything else. I didn't really give a shit. So that was my view. That was my ultimate aim, right? And it was good. I'll tell you what, I would do it exactly the same way if I could do it all over again, knowing the outcome. I wouldn't change a damn thing. And the Marines know that. And when I see comments from my Marines, that means more to me than any freaking medal you can put on my chest, because that's man to man, right?
Absolutely.
And most people that got medals and stuff, there's many that earned it. Certainly, I'll tell you what, any award that we gave, they earned it, right? But there's a lot of people didn't earn them. It was the backslide medal. You write me up, I'll write you up. Type bullshit. And then we'll talk about the combat action record. That's another thing. I sent you that one article that somebody wrote, and they talk about all this stuff. So I'm not bringing up anything out of school. But this is all important.
Right on. Good. Hey, sir, it's an amazing story. Operation Genghis, almost 4 months of straight out combat, taking the fight to the enemy, and probably the only time a Marine lieutenant colonel gets on the mic and say, "Hey, drop that bomb, or I'm going to look for you, find you, and kill you."
Yeah, worse that effect.
It's legendary, sir. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
In the next episode, what I would like to cover, the things that happen behind the scene, the things that happen afterwards. Some of the things you protected your Marines and even some of your officers from the backlash. And it's quite interesting because, in my opinion, part of it a lot of it happened because of jealousy. A lot of it happened because how effective, my opinion, because of the man you are, the officer you were, and you had these individuals who just envious, jealous, and unfortunately, it's human nature. And I think the next part 4, we're going to share with the audience things that probably most people don't know, never heard of. I know that after you retired, you kind of went underground for some time. Here recently, you started your channel, and this is pretty much your first interview, and I'm honored that you decided to do your interview here on my platform. To close this out, sir, anything else you want to say to wrap it up?
No, I just think, the Marines of 1-6 not only trained hard, which was hard, and, my fighting principle was, it's my job to make combat look easy for you. And we're going to train so hard that once we get through with combat, that's my job to prepare you mentally, physically, spiritually. And the time that we spent in the U.S. training, in the short podcast, I did the service. Every part of this, every battle, we could do a segment on it, right? And so, the credit belongs to the Marines because they're the ones that endured. So when I see any officer or staff and SEAL for that matter, taking any credit, it just tears me up. And I just want to go in there and just, do something to them, right? Because it doesn't. It belongs to the lance corporals and the corporals and the sergeants that endure. They're the ones that made it happen. It's easy for us officers to sit there and have the grandiose thoughts and, coup de oui and come up with these plans and shit. But the Marines are the ones that got executed. And, my hat's off to the staff and citizen officers that bought into the leadership style of leading from the front. I never bought into, it hit me like a ton of bricks that leading from the front doesn't mean in PT. Anybody can do that, right? But it's in combat.
In battle.
You're
Absolutely.
taking greater risk. And when the Marines see you taking a greater risk, they respond to it. They know that their lives are not going to be thrown away. And that's what it's all about. So now we've got, general officers sitting in different countries, directing operations, and that's horse shit. You got to be there. On D-Day at Normandy, we had 2 generals land on D-Day. Brigadier General Roosevelt, who later on died of a heart attack, is an old man, and General Cato. He's the one that came up with the line, Rangers lead the way. And that's the type of leadership we want from our senior leaders. And if they do it, guess what? Every battalion commander is going to do it. If every battalion commander do it, every company commander is going to do it. Every platoon commander will do it. And that's how the system's meant to work. It's not meant to work. You're sitting there reading a book and talking about it and theorizing. It's not. There's nothing about theory. I'll tell you what. You get in a gunfight, close gunfight, which we got into. All that shit goes out the window. It's all muscle memory. And I can tell you so many cases where a squad leader, because of good muscle memory, did exactly the right thing. He entered a home, and the enemy started shooting, withdrew, threw in a grenade, went back in. I mean, that's muscle memory. You don't have to sit there and debate it and talk about it. We just did it. And that's how you get success. These little successes all the way along, combined together, become operational success. So my hat's off to the Marines. When I told them, and when we got back to Rota, and I said, because I wouldn't let him use the moniker of the battalion, from the old days, 1-6 hard, because they weren't hard. They were chubsters that came from Okinawa. We're gooned up, man. 18 out of 71 sergeants. We didn't even have any freaking leadership. And they're walking around 1-6 hard. Hoorah, sir, 1-6 hard. It's like, shut the fuck up, man. You're not hard. I'll tell you when you're hard, And then when we're in Rota, Spain, and I did a Warriors night, and they wanted me to say a few words. And I got up there and I said, you are 1-6 hard. Don't you ever fucking forget it, And the place went just ape shit,
I bet.
And that's how you inspire people.
Yes.
And that's how the great leaders throughout history have done it. General Patton would do that, and people respond to that type of leadership in combat. But by the same token, you've got the leadership of, dealing with these Afghans also. That nobody could have done it. I'm telling you. They will not respond to some, weak, smooth-talking, perfume prince. I mean, it's really that simple. They see right through that shit. These guys are scavengers, right? They've been doing it for thousands of years. They can smell weakness.
Yeah, it's part of their culture.
Yeah, so
it's their culture.
So my hat's off, as their battalion commander. 1-6 was on. And I'll tell you what, there ain't another unit at that time and place in history was harder. I don't give a shit who you are. The things these young Marines did, nobody else could have done it. So
that's awesome.
That's
it. We salute you, 1-6. Genghis Khan, find, fix, and finish. Don't miss part 4.